submitted, and there were a few of them where I'd seen stuff that tied into helping answer those. So I have some slides, we can go over that, or if you guys want to just start the discussion, and as the questions pop up, I can put it up for reference.
All right.
Sally?
I have a thought. So that entire video, the end kind of thing that they were talking about in the video was that it all comes back to intention, being able to understand other people's intention. So would that same kind of damage affect empathy, do you think? Being able to it's kind of the same thing as intention, being able to understand other people's emotions and like thought process and goals.
Yeah.
So do you think this would have something to do with like the processing of empathy? Or
What do you guys think about that?
Well, in the article it said that people with damage to the VMPC, that there was a challenge for them to use empathy. So that's kind of what I was thinking, because they, like in the trolley thing, like sociopaths, they have problems with empathy, and they're more likely to say, I would push, or I would like kill like the least amount of people. And then also the children, they're very egocentric, so they're less likely to use empathy in like viewing actions. So,
So do you, Catherine had her hand up.
Well, I found the direct quote from the article where it says, patients with VMPC lesions commonly fail to apply such knowledge in daily living and exhibit impairments in processing social emotions such as empathy and embarrassment. And the question I posted also was about sociopaths, because I know they lack empathy and they can't relate to that. That's what I was interested in.
Yeah, so
what implications do you think this has for sociopaths or psychopathy or antisocial personality disorder?
Sally?
Sorry. I guess it would be interesting to kind of look into the development of the VMPC in people that are sociopaths or antisocial personality disorder, even autism. I think it'd be interesting to look into the actual development of that area as opposed to like damage necessarily or lesion. I think it'd be interesting to see if it's just like developing abnormal.
So would you look for kids with conduct disorder and follow them over time?
Conduct disorder is very different.
I know, but how? Basically, I'm proposing how would you know who to track?
So I'm a behavior coach. So for my clients that end up in the future having antisocial personality disorder, you obviously can't diagnose that as a child. Reactive attachment disorder is something that eventually kind of, if it isn't corrected, can turn into antisocial personality disorder.
Okay.
And that's something that's very behavioral and can be changed. So I think it would be very difficult to look into something kind of like that, though. That's a good point.
Did you have a comment?
Well, I was going to say that I know sociopaths, you can't really treat them. Like, if they're that way, you can't really teach them empathy. So is there a way to treat these patients to have them feel empathy, or I guess understand the different intents?
I didn't really look into like any potential sort of therapies or anything to help with this. Did anybody else by any chance look into that? Yeah.
I didn't look into it, but I know that sociopaths can be taught to function in society without needing really to empathize. They just really understand like that there's consequences to their actions, and that's kind of what motivates them to not go through with like, you know, you have a pencil that I want, I'm gonna kill you for it.
That's a great example.
And it seems like the article stated, I believe the article stated that these people did not have a problem with figuring out that, oh, this is wrong to do, you shouldn't do that. It was just that if that wasn't the outcome, then it wasn't wrong. And I feel like the article really focused on them interpreting the person who was causing or not causing the harm. But I think empathy goes more to the person who was caused or wasn't caused harm. Because they're able to like say, you know, if I like someone who's able to use empathy is able to put themselves in their shoes and say, well, that could have happened to me. That person is not gonna, you know, they should they should face the consequences kind of thing, instead of like saying, oh, this person just didn't do it.
So you're saying, it sounds like to me that the empathy, if we're thinking of empathy as being able to take another person's perspective, then maybe they're impaired in understanding another person's intention, but not impaired in understanding another person's feeling of victimhood or having been wronged in some way. So it'd be a more selective kind of inability to put yourself in another person's place. So that makes sense.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they reworded the stimuli test they did from the victim's perspective rather than the perpetrators, and see if the results would differ at all. Yeah.
So now maybe I need to reread the article then. How much are we sure that there's not a confound in the validity of the measure then? How much is this actually measuring morality as opposed to empathy? Because the more I'm thinking about like this task, and it's talking about like the intention of these people, and if you have a problem with understanding people's intention, like, oh, they didn't mean to, or they meant to hurt somebody, to me that's kind of, I mean, I understand how that's morality, but I also feel like that's a lot of an empathy kind of thing. And if they're already shown to have problems with empathy, how much are we actually measuring morality, and how much of this is measuring something that we already know to be true as far as empathy?
Well, the way, if I'm interpreting your comment, the way I would respond to that is we are attempting to understand how people make moral judgments, and we understand that there's at least two aspects of a situation that can influence how people judge it. So one is the intention of the person who might have caused harm, and the other is whether harm was caused. And my impression is that whatever the reason, whatever the, I guess, the mediating process by which a person with BMPC doesn't judge intention, it could be through lack of empathy, it could be through some other process that I can't name, but the outcome is still the same. It's still a moral judgment. So, yeah, go ahead.
It reminds me of like when I forget what like research it was, but I remember like before when they started doing like tests of morality, and like the women would always do really bad, and they couldn't figure out why, and then like and then some researcher, I forget who it was, like redid that research so that it would be more accurate, playing into account the fact that the females might have been looking at things in a more like concrete sort of way instead of just like a logical, like abstract sort of way. So like if you ask her a question about her kids, she's not just going to say like, oh, in theory this would be the best way. She's going to like react more to like, what is realistic? Like, you know, am I realistically going to let my child throw a temper tantrum in the middle of like the grocery store, like even though I know I should ignore his temper tantrum because, you know, that'll teach him to whatever, you know. I think the finding was basically that females would look at it more in like a realistic sense instead of just, you know, what should I do? So this reminds me of that because I think, you know, from that finding, females tended to look at it more in this type of way. Like, what's the actual outcome? Like, what's the reality of this? Like, what's actually going on? Rather than what do they mean to do? So I'd be interested to see, in this case, if there are sex differences among like normal patients, like not among people with damage to this area.
I think that might be a little bit different though, because that's taking what is the best decision that I can make versus what is a plausible decision that I can make. Like, what can I actually do within my control for what makes the most sense in this current situation rather than what are my intentions. Because I don't think it looks at your intentions as much as what you think is realistic within your capabilities. So I don't think that that's really in the same realm that this is.
Well,
Could be related, but
yeah.
more, it's more concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it directly overlaps, but I think in certain situations, it certainly has like the same elements there, because a lot of time your intentions have to do with what do I think is realistic. And, for some people, they might be able to separate, I intend to do good, but realistically I can't. So I think in some situations it would overlap and sometimes not. But
How many of you guys have spent much of your life watching Law and Order? Obviously you, Law and Order. So one of the things that has always struck me about that show is, well, it's set in New York, where the laws are different in New York than they are in other states. I mean, every state's laws are different, and I don't know if this is true in other states or not, but in New York at least, if you're committing a felony and someone is killed during the commission of the felony, you are responsible for that death, regardless of your intention to kill that person. Do you think that's fair?
No, but I know that it's true here too.
Is it?
Kevin Sheriff has a little brother. He was an accessory in a robbery that ended up in his friend and him were intent to rob someone, and then that person shot and killed his friend, and then he was the one that was held liable for the death because they were committing the crime.
Wow, that's a double reverse whammy.
And he was really, really young at the time.
So I feel like the sort of like what we think of as the norm for moral judgments, being that intention is important. I think that is true. Most of us have that feeling, but there's a lot of limitations on that. And what about cultural and national situation? I mean, there are countries in the world where it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever what your intentions were for anything. If there's a bad outcome, you're doomed. I mean, I can't tell you what they are right now because my memory's shot, but I have read about places where if you're involved in something going wrong, it doesn't matter what your role was, and it doesn't matter what your intentions were, you're just going to you're going to be punished for it. So I kind of question the underlying assumption that this is this is the normal way to do it. Maybe in our society it's the normal way to do it. What do you guys think about that? Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like that's true because in other classes I've seen stories of like people in different cultures who, when they have family members die, they will, as a sacred ritual, they'll like eat them. And here, like, that's considered completely wrong. So I think this is based on like our society norms and how we've constructed it throughout the years.
So the idea of adaptiveness applies to morality per se, but not necessarily the specific rules of morality, right? So let's see. We have Melissa. Do you have a question you wanted to bring up?
I was just wondering if there's a difference between those who have injured the NPC, like through a car accident, and those who have developed kind of chemical imbalance. Like, is there a difference in their judgment of morality, or is it somewhat similar?
Did you hear?
Yeah, the article was focusing on lesions, which I assume would be through damage or some sort of accident or something. So I don't know.
What kind of damage are you specifically thinking about?
Just like a head injury, like if they had somehow damaged their brain, versus like a chemical imbalance, like that's how they develop it.
Oh, I see. So you're talking about damage versus having kind of a congenital problem where the BMPC just didn't develop normally from the beginning.
If there's like a difference.
What do you guys think about that?
Well, I'm wondering if there was any, like, let's say for instance, they end up having a lesion. Prior to having the lesion, they were able to exercise empathy, or understand empathy and intent, and be able to give what the generalized answer would be. And I'm wondering how much of that would be carried over after they've had the lesion. Do you have any information on that? Because if we looked at it from the standpoint that someone's PMPC never actually developed, they never had prior experience to even go off of in no basis.
Yeah, I have some for part of that question. I know there was a couple of questions
I need to be able to see you.
that were posted asking, like, you know, these people, if they knew all these moral things, if that would carry over in effect. In the textbook, there was a section that was talking about internal and external cues. And so for the internal section, it was talking about that internalized information develops these rules, which would be like the moral rules. And then this creates temporal memory. And so it was saying that people who have damaged prefrontal cortexes generally have defective temporal memory. And so because of that, they then don't have that knowledge come to mind. They're more focused on the external cues and the outcomes. So it seemed to me, and there was a part in the article that was, where is it? Oh yeah, in the intro is saying, in general, despite preserved general intelligence, logical reasoning, and declarative knowledge of social and moral norms, patients with VNPC lesions commonly fail to apply such knowledge. And so from what I'm seeing, it seems like they may still have that knowledge, but for whatever reason, it's being superseded by the brain damage, and they're having to focus on outcomes and external cues.
That kind of implies that although if you never developed, maybe you wouldn't have the knowledge, or you wouldn't internalize the knowledge, I guess is how they would say it. But even if people who have lesions, who were fully functional prior to the lesion, cannot act on that prior knowledge, even though they still have it. And in fact, if ordinary folks, when their brains are disrupted in a particular way, it's as if they didn't ever believe that the intention was so important. I wonder if there wouldn't be much difference in behavior. Maybe there's a difference in the internal process, but it seems like the outcome is going to be pretty similar.
I almost wonder, like, with those people, do they ever think back on something, like a decision that they made or some type of discussion that they were in where they're like, it differs from how they feel now? Do they look back and like, man, I was wrong because, you know, it wasn't about the intent, it was about on whether or not they actually killed me over a pencil, you know? Like, So I'm wondering if they actually go back and forth and toy with that idea of a decision that they made before and how they currently feel about it now.
Marin, did you have something?
Yeah, kind of off of that, maybe unless I'm just not understanding right, like if they still have the knowledge, but like can they just not access it, or are they not aware that they still have that knowledge? Because it's like, it seems like, it reminds me back to like the motion article we talked about, like discussed, it seems like they don't even know that that used to be something that they would find disgusting.
Yeah.
So like,
they
don't know that they lost anything.
So they have the declarative knowledge of it, or how did they? No, that's not it. It was the idea that they know what the rules are, but they just don't apply them.
Yeah, that was from the article. All it really says is they have the knowledge, but they commonly fail to apply the knowledge. It doesn't really specify how.
Is it possible that if they don't understand intent, that they might not recognize the situation as being something that they know?
Huh? Interesting. That's a good possibility.
Because if they understand the intent, then they can recognize it. Whereas if they're just looking at the outcome, it's a little bit more concrete. So if you're not able to remember why or what happened, or really understand why or what happened, then you wouldn't really be able to relate it to those rules that apply to those causes.
Yeah, maybe it's sort of an inability to notice intention, like the attention failures that were talked about in some of the videos that we saw earlier. Like, it's not that the person looks at the picture of the flower and intentionally ignores what's on the left side. They just don't even see it. So maybe it's like intention blindness instead of attention blindness. That's interesting.
Yeah, you should email the authors.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. So let's see, Shayla, do you have something you want to contribute?
I was wondering, in your opinion, what do you think is more important, the intended person's actions or outcome?
Personally, I'd say probably the intent. Personally, is my opinion.
He's not willing to self-identify as somebody with defective moral judgment.
Yeah.
What do you think, Shayla? Intent. So we could ask people to raise their hands, but I don't know that anybody would. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, if you want to ask that question, I think it would, like, related to this, the airline issue would be really interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Related to that, because apparently their like explanation for that is that they were trying to like peacefully lift him from the seat, and then he fell and hit his head on the armrest. So do you think that matters? That he accidentally fell and his nose got bloody himself, or does it not matter because they picked him up?
How do you peacefully lift someone?
without smacking them first.
I don't know what's true, but I read just a headline I read was that he actually wasn't a doctor and had a criminal record.
Well, I just had
Is that true? I don't know.
Trying to discredit
What
this
next?
guy.
He was a doctor that he got his license revoked for like 5 or 10 years or something, and that he just got his license back like last year. So he just started practicing again.
So this is, again, you guys should watch Law and Order. Everything that we're saying is played out in that show. It's really quite a good show. So Shayla, was that the major question that you wanted to bring up? So let's see. So we've heard, Amber, did you have another thing that you wanted to bring up?
No, my question was just basically like, does like our intention drive our behavior, or does our behavior drive intention?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. So, did you guys hear that?
Does our behavior drive our intention, or does intention drive our behaviors?
Oh, Val.
I feel like, naturally speaking, our behavior drives our intention, but the goal is to have intention drive behavior, like the ultimate goal.
So, what could you say more about that idea?
It's just kind of really hard to like measure intention, because like we all have our own biases, which could then lead us to interpret someone else's intention wrong. So it just makes me want, I don't know how to explain it really.
What about the idea that a person does something and then, so I'm putting it within inside the person. So you do something, something happens, and then you formulate the reason for why you did what you did, or, you know, did you have that in mind ahead of time or not? Yeah.
I was going to say that I feel like our intentions drive our behaviors, because our intentions are more emotion-based than innate, and our behaviors are a mechanical response to our emotions. That's how I feel about it. So I feel like intention precedes behavior, even if we don't see it beforehand.
So to me, there's a difference between your actual intention and the one that you think you have. You know, there might be anyway. I know I've convinced myself of lies in the past. One of my favorite examples of this is when I was quite a lot younger. I was in the car with my mother, and she was scolding me for something, and I was arguing against it, and she accused me of lying. And I was furious that she accused me of lying. And I was like, how dare you? And then I realized I was lying. And so I was like, I kind of shut up. And she looked at me and said, like that. And I just realized that I had convinced myself, at least briefly, that it was totally outrageous for her to be accusing me of this terrible thing, even though it was totally true. Yeah.
There was I can't remember what class I was in, because I heard the same concept where it was like behavior drives you versus intent. And so, but it's normal people think that intent drives you versus behavior, but the way that it was explained was like, let's say for instance that you want to be super religious, you want to go to church, and you have all these great things that are mapped out, but how often do you really go to church despite the fact that you want to? So your intentions are that you want to go to church and you want to be good and you say your prayers, but how many of us actually really do it? So our lives are really driven more so on behavior than they are intent, because there's plenty of things that we wish we could do. It's more so like the future person we hope to become. But in truth, it's really our behavior that kind of actually kind of takes over our lives. So it's really more so behavior than intentions.
So yeah, how much is intention really a future-oriented thing versus something that causes action in the now?
I think you could argue that maybe the difference is that we're missing like the desire part of it, and I don't think that desire is always the same thing as intent. So maybe desire is driving our behavior, and then we ascribe intent to it. And I think maybe that's part of the like discrepancy.
That makes some sense too.
I think kind of like what she was saying, maybe like a planned action is more so what they mean by intent, rather than like a thought, rather than like an idea. Because it's one thing to think on something, it's another thing to act on something. But those are a different level of intent, because if you have that current planned action, it's something that you're actually going to do. And your intent is what your planned action is, and then maybe you fail to achieve the goal of your planned action. But I think once you decide this is what I'm doing, and you have that planned action, I do think that, like she said, there's a difference in the now versus like the desire or like a future goal, because you plan out your actions before you perform them. I mean, ideally.
Yeah, I think we're operating on two different connotative definitions of intent there.
Yeah, I think so too. And this reminded me of another really kind of fascinating finding in neuroscience that's a little bit difficult for me to explain. If anybody else in here knows about this, please jump in. But there is research, and I can't remember the guy's name who published it. I know it starts with an L. It's been out for a while, where he was using event-related potentials or some kind of EEG measure that it's called the readiness potential. So before you do an action, your brain kind of ramps up to move or to do the action. So there's a detectable signature in the brain. And he did a study where he had people somehow indicate when they became aware. So basically here was the task. Move your arm. Okay, now I want you to move your arm just spontaneously whenever you feel like it. I want you to move your arm. I don't know if it was the arm. But I want you to push this button to tell me when you become aware of the fact that you're going to move your arm. And what he found was that the brain knew the person was going to move their arm before they knew it. Like their brain had already registered and was beginning the process of moving before the person became consciously aware that they were going to move their arm. So that's like intention at a microscopic level, but it kind of gives you the clue that there is a lot of stuff going on that we're not, we're just kind of making up a story to explain what happens. Yeah.
I think I remember reading something like either similar to that, or maybe it was the same study, but I can't remember, did they take into account, I mean, obviously you have like a
Reaction time, yeah, they did.
time.
Yeah, they did.
So they just looked at the ESP for the finger movement.
I forget exactly what they did, but I remember because I thought of that myself. And yes, they did take into account reaction time for the finger movement, and it was before that. Yeah. So yeah, it's like, holy crap. So you're really not responsible for everything you do. It's your brain. Your brain did it. And in fact, these questions that we're talking about do bring up legal issues about responsibility and for your actions, which we haven't really gotten into, but yes.
It makes me think of like drinking and driving almost. Because I guess like it does impair your, that prefrontal cortex and your ability to make decisions. But like, is it really an intention? Or
I think the way the law has handled that is that if you drink and drive, they infer that you intended to drive drunk.
Right.
And so if you hurt somebody, you're
It's your
responsible.
fault. Yeah.
Even though you certainly didn't intend to run over someone unless you're psychopathic. But did you have something else to add? I thought I saw your hand up down there. No? Okay. Are we? Okay, so are we through? Do you have anything? Do you have a parting joke or anything? All right. I'm going to say we're done. All right. Class is over.